So the Woodford Y34 has been our most popular selling hydrant for over 80 years, and the basis of design is fairly complex. That's hard to emulate, hard to copy because of its uniqueness. And most of the Chinese imports, really try to just use lower quality materials, fewer features, and when you're excavating down, 8, 9, 10 feet, it's very, very expensive to service these imported hydrants. So the concept with Woodford is put it in once and it'll last decades, if not longer. So the Y34, one of the things that makes it very unique is we have a variable flow. So when the plunger, you've got water being piped into the valve body here. When the plunger goes up via this linkage, you can see it has a fixed travel pattern. So this variable flow wheel allows the plunger to travel further and further up to give you a higher volume of water coming through there. So what's neat about it is no matter how much water you need, you can just, based on your inlet pressure, you can move this clevis wheel around and you'll get a particular flow. So if you want to fill a 300-gallon tank, for instance, and you've got 60 pounds per inch, 60 psi, you can just move this around, go away for an hour or two, you come back, and it's not going to move. It's going to stay. Whereas most of the competition, they use something as a simple set screw that when they open their handle, you have to torque a screw and hope that the threads catch on this very hard cast iron and hold it. What we find is if you hold this up a lot of times, over time this will rust. The zinc plating will work off of the fastener and it will seize up inside of that cast iron assembly. Another thing about the Woodford that's pretty unique is we have 3 linkages here. What they do is they allow the hydrant to pivot out in a way that pulls this brass operating stem through a graphite packing. Why that's important is when you tighten this packing nut, the graphite expands outwardly and inwardly and fills this void. What's neat about it is over years of service, 10, 12, 15 years of service, you can get a small leak here. So you just tighten the packing nut ever so slightly and it will recompress that packing to fill this void. But the idea is you want this brass to travel through the packing in a completely vertical path every time you open the hydrant. Because when you do that, you get an exorbitantly long life cycle out of this graphite packing. And we find some of these hydrants in the States are 25, 30, 35 years old with the original packing never been repaired, serviced, or rebuilt. And on a generic, imported hydrant, you don't have that complexity of linkage. So when you open it, their rod will pull up through the packing and it will pull to the side ever so slightly. And what winds up happening is because the manufacturing tolerances for graphite packing are quite high, most people use O-rings. So in this particular example that we're showing here, they use 2 double stacked O-rings. And the problem with that is O-rings don't do a great job of sealing if they have friction. If you just put them in a void and they stay static, they're an excellent way to seal and weatherproof. But when you have that brass traveling up and down through O-rings, the brass rod winds up acting kind of like a knife, and it saws through those O-rings over time, sometimes as quickly as 2 years or less. And that is a big pain in the rear to take the head off and go and put 2 O-rings, which are generally pretty economical, but the labor to replace those O-rings can cost, hundreds of dollars to have someone service it, or if you're doing it yourself, quite a bit of time to replace it. So, you don't get a very long life cycle, and you also get that side pull out of these very basic linkages. So another thing that we do that's very unique is we use a very thick wall galvanized seamless pipe. So the idea here is when you're manufacturing plumbing pipe, you want it to last if it's buried underground. So most of our competition uses a low grade, Chinese import thin wall thin wall steel pipe. So when you put it underground, you get a lot of humidity in the soil, a lot of water, and you get a lot of rusting. So they just spray a galvanized coating on their pipe, and we don't. We pretty much take our pipe and we dip it. So not only do you not see a seam because it's a different type of pipe, it's continuous weld or seamless pipe, there's nothing to catch or rust in there. Then we dip it in a vat of galvanized coating, so it's very, very thick build on both the outside and the inside, so you don't have to worry about rusting down the road. All of our competition, this is just a generic example, they all use sprayed on galvanized on the outside of the pipe. So where the water is traveling, you've got no corrosion protection whatsoever. So generally those pipes will corrode fairly rapidly, whereas a Woodford supplied pipe casing will last quite many years, sometimes even multiple decades. So again, we don't use a rod in the pipe casing. We use another pipe. It's a pipe within a pipe. So the idea there is, if we use a 3/8 inch pipe, we know that the plunger is going to seat correctly every single time that you open and close the hydrant, because the pipe will not bow. If you use a solid pipe, it's much weaker and it does not maintain the structural rigidity and integrity of an operating pipe that we would supply with. So when you get, say, a 10-foot bury, that solid rod, 3/16 rod, it's going to bow. And when it does, it can slap against the inside of the pipe, damage the pipe, create issues, and it also will rust. Typically, it's not galvanized either, whereas you can see here in this little cutaway pocket, our pipe is galvanized on the inside and outside that operates the plunger as well. So, very, very robust. And this is a small thing that a lot of people don't quite fathom, but this black material is a tar, because when you have brass and galvanized steel pipe together, you have electrolysis that can occur, and this pipe can fail because electricity will travel very low voltage, very low amperage between these two dissimilar materials and cause it to rust. And if you'll notice, on a photograph here, there's no coating whatsoever on our competition, because they just avoid that costly step of putting a tar to keep this rusting from occurring. So it's a very small thing on its face, but once you bury it, it's a huge thing to stave off electrolysis. Again, we coat these hydrants. When you paint something, via spray, you're atomizing the paint particles and they land on the hydrant. We know that that's not a thick enough or durable enough coating for humid climates. So we dip these in a big tank that basically fills every single void with a very, very high build corrosion resistant paint. Whereas this material here, and you can see this one has already got some paint coming off of it, because it's been sprayed on, very lightly coated, just to kind of fill the basic pits where, we fill pretty much everything with the dip. So over time, you're just not going to have the corrosion whatsoever. And our valve body, which is very important because that's where your steel pipe is coming in for your supply or your plastic pipe, it is a red brass material. So it is much more durable than the Chinese import yellow brass. Yellow brass has a tremendously high zinc content. So over time, the zinc will leach its way out of the casting and break. Sometimes the threads will break, etc. Whereas red brass has much lower zinc content and very robust. We do make these in the British thread pipe fitting. We're pretty confident that most units that are imported from China are probably headed for the U.S. market, which is the largest. So for the European market, they may have to buy adapter bushings to use the different pipe thread, whereas at Woodford, we make every order to order, and we will actually send the hydrants out furnished with the common needs for the inlet there in all of Europe. So it's just a very different basis of design, with the complexity of the linkage, the variable flow clevis, the U.S. non-recycled cast iron. We also can look at our plunger barbs. There's 3 barbs on our plungers that allow the EPDM rubber to stay and be held together, whereas almost all of our competition have 1 barb. So over time, as the rubber separates from the brass, it can break off down in there and have to be extracted, whereas 3 barbs, the chances of it breaking off is very, very low. And another thing, it's kind of a small point, but you can see their plunger is a flat, kind of a bullet nose plunger, and ours is very domed and curved. The idea there is, you get a lot more seating surface. So if you get a rock or a piece of debris in there, our plunger still has plenty of area to seat and seal off the water. Whereas if a dome, a flat plunger gets a piece of debris or rock in there, it's just not going to travel all the way down, and you'll find that it will not shut off, which is a huge thing, because then you've got to shut off the water and do a field repair. So with Woodford, you're getting the very best. You've got a 87-year history here in the U.S. of unrivaled comparison. No one can really copy it because of its complexities and its loyal brand following. And it's just well worth a small increase in upfront cost, so that down the road, your customers are not going to be digging out and repairing and bringing it back to you being very unsatisfied. They're going to have a great experience, and we look forward to you giving our product a good try.
So, John, the other thing is that you could, if you put it against the car industry, for instance, this is going into Europe, and we know the quality standards of Mercedes, BMW. I think we could put this in the same category compared with, say, something that comes out of China, which is obviously a lesser manufactured quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to put it into a car comparison, I would say the Y34 is, like your all-wheel drive, V8 BMW 545. Very, very attention to detail, fit, finish, function, performance. And then these, they drop way off. Probably not even the lowest quality German. You're probably getting into
pretty standard
Indian, Chinese type automobiles. I mean, it's really a big drop off. But I would say at best, if this product is functioning at its very best, it's probably your most base level Volkswagen, and perhaps not even that high of a quality.
So we're talking about obviously the material and parts, the high quality of that in comparison to the lesser quality parts of the ones that obviously are coming out of China. The big thing here is that with the correct insulation, you're digging down below the frost line, and the last thing farmers want to do is have to go back and check their water supply with issues. And of course it always happens at the wrong time, but here you've got something that's got quality, you can turn off, and you can be more proactive towards the other elements of farming and not worrying about the water.
Absolutely. The biggest complaint we ever get from farmers is that they don't see them and they back over them with equipment, and that's why in the 40s we changed these from green to orange so that you can see them. That was probably the biggest slight of our product, was the color. So we've had a blaze orange color for years so that you can easily identify it and not back into it with farm equipment.
Right. So then, of course, like in any market, you've got the affordability factor, and of course, not every day someone can buy the BMW. But what you have done is that you've developed the model R34, which I'll get you to explain where that fits in the line of quality. So if I hand this to you now,
yeah,
you can...
absolutely. One of the things that we find is that many of our customers utilize the Y34, two dozen times a day, 6 to 7 days a week, without fail. Just overuse, using all the time, and they utilize the features, they love the benefits, and they need a solid workhorse that will work flawlessly forever. And then other customers of ours say, I only use my hydrant maybe once a day or 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm doing one very specific purpose. I don't really need variable flow. I just need it to come off and on, but I don't really want to buy a low quality hydrant. I still want to buy Woodford quality. What do you have? And we really didn't have a lot of lower cost items because this model, Y34, was so popular. So we decided to design a hydrant that could share quite a bit of the successes that the Y34 has, and still come in at a much lower manufacturing cost to provide the Woodford name. So this product, the R34, is a more economical alternative for lower duty usage, but it still shares a lot of products and product technology and components with the Y34. So the valve body, same exact part number, same exact part. The pipe casing we talked about with the dip galvanized US steel, very thick wall thickness, also the same. We use the same brass rod that travels through the same graphite packing, and we also use the same brass nozzle. We use the same tar coating between the two dissimilar metals, and we're able to offer a Woodford product that has Woodford right on the casting, so it's still a Woodford product, and it's just designed for your lighter use, type application. It's still going to hold up, still very, very well designed, very well made, shares, some components and technology with the Y, remove a few, features that ultimately for some users don't deliver a tangible benefit because they just don't need it. Much like automobiles, they have light duty trucks, they have medium duty trucks. and heavy duty trucks. And this is kind of our heavy duty truck, and this would be our light to medium duty hydrant that can bear a pretty tremendous load, but it's not meant to be used 50 times a day, 7 days a week. So you've got two distinct choices, and also you're not getting into the Chinese import that sacrifice product quality just for low cost. You're still getting a very premium U.S. brand with many decades of loyal following. And even though this is a newer product, it's catching on quite well, because we're finding that not everyone needs such a robust application, and they're looking for a little more value. So that's why the R34 was developed, and it's been a winner for Woodford manufacturers.
Yeah, and it would be fair to say that due to the the replication of some of the parts, is that it's closer to this than it is.
Oh, absolutely.
No comparison to the Chinese.
No comparison, because we still are going to put our name on it, and we're going to share enough technologies. Our manufacturing processes are very similar. Our warranties are the same. 1 year from date of installation. That to be a Woodford product, we're not going to cut corners. We're going to try to reduce cost, but we're not going to do anything that we feel could encroach on our brand name. And again, the plunger is the same down here in the bottom. It's got a little bit different linkage, but the rubber and the way that it's designed is identical. So it just really does share. It's almost like a little kid brother to the Y34. That's a little smaller, a little less stature, but still a pretty reasonable choice.
All right. Well, thank you, John.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by.
Okay.